Hi, I'm Storm Gloor from the University of Colorado at Denver. Today, Dr. Stan Renard, my colleague in this project, and I are going to give you an overview of what we've been working on. It's an analysis of entertainment zones in the United States. We are going to, in our research, identify attributes of music-centric entertainment zones. We're going to inventory and map them. We're going to build data sets from the source data we've been provided. And we're going to assess the impact on residents of these entertainment zones as well as tourists. Finally, we're going to map the geographical distribution of these entertainment zones. You'll see a cluster map right here that kind of defines what we're doing, but Dr. Renard is going to come back later and show some mapping that's been developed. It's very interesting. But for right now, we should define what an entertainment zone is. They're known as concentrated nightlife districts, and I'm sure something comes to mind when you're given that definition. But they are music-centric entertainment zones that we are looking at, and these are key components of many of the cities we know as music cities. There's several or many music and entertainment venues that exist in close proximity and include bars and cafes and restaurants and other performance spaces in these entertainment zones. And they're typically located within urban environments. You probably think of 6th Street in Austin or Beale Street in Memphis, or others like Bourbon Street in New Orleans or the Strip in Las Vegas when you're given these kind of definitions. But getting a little more deeper into them, there are 4 types of topologies that have been identified that belong to these types of entertainment zones. One of them is a mix of industrial buildings with sort of generic multi-story lofts above them, and there's inside the buildings free floor space, plenty of free floor space, and very few columns. You know, what would make a great dance floor or a general admission music venue. There's another topology that identifies these entertainment zones in old downtown or faded commercial corridors. There you might find boarded up retail and vacant residential units above, maybe for a long time. And usually they're not renovated very often, and when they are, it's basically to accommodate the nightlife. Another type lies in these clumps of venues that are within mid-20th century types of strip malls and freestanding commercial buildings. And finally, there are entertainment zones that are integrated into the traditional urban neighborhoods that exist already and are well known. And in these, you'll see that the ground floor space is taken up by commercial and institutional uses. What you see here is a picture of the Gaslamp Quarter in San Diego, for instance. You see that those first floor uses and those upper floor residential areas. But another example might be Bricktown in Oklahoma City. You see there as another example of an entertainment zone taking up a former industrial space. Some common characteristics of these entertainment zones include the fact that they're generally located near downtown areas. They're relatively, empty during the day, but at night they're packed. You can hardly take a car through there, even if in many cases it's closed off. The streets and sidewalks become these sort of social venues. You'll see clumps of people there visiting on the sidewalks and almost in the streets, and you'll also see that in parking lot areas. There's a lot of chances to run into people and see old friends and things like that outside. There's generally a high turnover in the tenants in these entertainment zones. They switch out a lot, and even the owners switch out a lot. And the architecture from one building to another may be very different as they lie right beside each other. There could be some shops within these entertainment zones that aren't necessarily entertainment related. A deli, tattoo shops, and things like that. And the businesses are mostly independent. There's very few chains that are involved in these entertainment zones. And when it comes to food, it's burgers, pizza, and tacos, that kind of fare. The interiors of the buildings will have the high roofs and or the tin ceilings, and really harken back to historical times. And the outdoor areas are pretty flexible. They can be switched up pretty relatively easily and accommodate street side vendors, and in the warmer temperatures become a space for outdoor dining or even music. And finally, the businesses and entertainment zones, as you might expect, are generally open pretty late. We've got some pictures here of some examples, and you'll see that there's a picture of Nashville and Broadway Street in Nashville, and clearly you can see the office buildings right behind them. And this entertainment district zone is actually pretty much adjacent to the downtown area, so it's right there. And in the next photo, you'll see Bill Street during the day. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't seem that busy during the day, but you can guarantee that it will be packed at night, and I'm sure the streets will be closed off. The next photo is of Deep Ellum, or a photo within Deep Ellum in Dallas. And to give you an example of, the kind of food places you'll see in these entertainment zones. And finally, a picture from my city here in South Broadway in Denver. You can see how the buildings change, have no correlation from building to building. They all look different. Just a few examples there. And finally, Larimer Square, which is also in Denver. You can see that photo there as well, and you can see the flexibility of the outdoor areas there and the sidewalk areas that comes with that particular entertainment zone. We should also talk about the value of entertainment zones. I mean, why are they sought after? Why are they important? Why are they good for economic development? Well, for one thing, they create what has been called a lively and economically successful urban district. Lots of crowds bringing attention to the area, and certainly economically viable for the money it generates or is generated by the businesses there. There's really a lot of informality to the design of these areas. It's sort of there's no plan, and really, even though there is no plan, it's functions as good urban design according to our research. They develop organically, as I just said. There's not really plans. There's no master plan generally for these entertainment zones. They sort of happen as businesses come and go, and as traffic changes, and as those types of effects. They can certainly add vibrancy to urban districts, areas that were underused or former warehouse areas, as I mentioned earlier. They can add to and make those areas more vibrant. And finally, a word you may not be familiar with, heterotopias. These sort of areas can create a space where an individual can sort of leave that rigid, rule-based work area during the week and head out to an entertainment zone or a music district and see, unkempt areas, a lot of lack of maintenance in areas, and not have to worry about that pile of trash near them, or the smoke and the smells that can come with these types of venues. So they sort of can lose themselves from the normal, everyday world and come to these entertainment zones, and there's your definition. But these entertainment zones are very valuable to communities, and there's study upon study that has proven their economic effect and their effect on the well-being of the community. But I hope you've seen that value by now and understand what we're talking about here. And now that you've had this overview of these entertainment zones, I'll let Dr. Renard provide a sort of overview of our initial findings and the data and the mapping.
Thank you, Storm. I will be discussing more of the data-centric aspect of this project. And let's get started by looking at this GIS representation of music-centric entertainment zones in Chicago. Chicago is perhaps the city that has the most of those, concentrated pockets of venues that are walking distance from each other. And so, for instance, and they are very much organized in very different ways. If you look at Wrigleyville, which is showcased here in purple, you see that it's pretty much, all the venues are on one street. And you can just walk down the street and hop and do venue hopping. Whereas Logan Square, which is represented with green dots, is spread out over a much wider area. We looked at data for 27 states, and we have here a table that showcases the names of those entertainment zones or districts, the zip code of each, where each of these zones is located at, the city and the state. We have about 110 of those, and we wanted to first look at, was there any commonalities in the names of these entertainment zones? We saw that 39 of them had absolutely unique names, such as Deep Ellum in Dallas, Texas. 18 included the word district, such as the Warehouse District in Austin, Texas. 14 included the word street, 6th Street, Water Street in Milwaukee, and so forth. 7 are labeled as square, such as the Sundance Square in Fort Worth, Texas. 5 are labeled as strip, so the Sunset Strip, certainly the St. Mary's Strip in San Antonio. 4 are labeled as a beach, Newport Beach, and so forth. 2 as a corridor, the H corridor in DC is one of those corridors. And 2 included the word entertainment, only 2. Okay, so now let's look at this summary of data table that we have here. This is a table that showcases the number of zones that are, that we were able to see per state, the number of zones that were that are apparent per city, and then the number of venues per state in zones, and then the number of venues per city, finally the numbers of venues per zone. So let's start with the zones per state. We see that across that pool of 110 of those entertainment zones, per state we see about an average of 4 across those 27 states that we studied. And then per zones in each of those states, at the city level, we see about 2 of those entertainment zones on average. And on average, again, that would account to 53 venues per state, 27 per city, and 13 per zone. We also decided to create some geospatial data. We wanted to understand how large are these areas that encompass all of these independent venues. And we wanted to also understand how long will it take you to walk from one end of these entertainment zones to the other on average. And finally, we wanted to see how far they were from the downtowns of American cities. On average, the general area in square miles is 0.26 square miles, so 0.26. And then the distance in between outer venues we saw that was just about under a mile, and the distance to the downtown areas of these entertainment zones was just about under 1.5 miles. Now, certainly many of those are right downtown, so you can consider 6th Street to be downtown Austin. And so we kind of looked at that as well, and we noticed that 53 of these entertainment zones out of our pool of 110 were located less than 0.5 miles from downtown, so a walkable distance, immediately from the downtown to those areas, so certainly geared towards tourism. But that also meant that 57 were not. 57 were perhaps more known by local residents and certainly less accessible to tourists. Finally, for those of you who are interested in navigating this data set, we'll make this available to you. We have a map that if you double click on each of the cities and the zones, it will show you the details, similarly to that map of Chicago that I showcased earlier. And you have a search bar menu in the upper left corner and a legend menu in the lower left corner. All of these entertainment zones are color-coded by entertainment zones, not by venue names. So each entertainment zones is very much color-coded in one particular color within each of those cities, and making it easy to see the delimitation in between each some of especially adjacent entertainment zones that you will see on these maps. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. We look forward to your questions and your feedback at the MIA Summit, as we are certainly fine-tuning our definition of what these entertainment zones, these music-centric entertainment zones truly are. Thank you.